Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Caribbean Export, let me welcome you to Caribbean Export's Talking Exports webinar series. This is our 7th installment today, and I'm happy to see so many familiar faces. I am pleased that you have made it a recurring item on your calendars. My name is Natasha Edwin Walcott. I am the Senior Advisor, Competitiveness and Export Promotion here at Caribbean Export, and I'll be your moderator today. By now, most of you should be aware of Caribbean Export's mandate to support private sector development, assisting SMEs to become competitive. Over the series, we have looked at various responses to the pandemic for both goods and services providers. Some of those webinars are the content of which is available on our website, should any of you wish to revisit them. Considered cash flow management, how to communicate with customers, leveraging social media, branding, managing your supply chain, promoting and selling your music during and after the crisis, just to name a few of those topics. Today, we want to explore the issue of business continuity. I am sure you will agree that none of us could have anticipated the deep and long-lasting impact that a crisis of such proportions has demonstrated. But are there measures we can adapt in our businesses to mitigate the risk and impact? While there is no playbook for how to respond to this crisis, a robust business continuity plan can improve your chances at resilience and recovery. So with these brief words, let me introduce our facilitator this morning. She is Mrs. Cheryl Griffith. She is the Managing Director of BCM Services, Inc., which specializes in business continuity and risk management. She has over 20 years experience working in the offshore financial services sector, where she was responsible for assessing organizational risk, determining business continuity requirements, and recommending recovery and continuity strategies. Cheryl conducts seminars and workshops addressing topics pertaining to disaster recovery, business recovery, incident management, emergency management, and contingency planning. Cheryl holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's in leadership, both from Grand Canyon University, USA, and is a certified business continuity professional, an associate risk management professional, and a certified BCP, business continuity planning instructor, through the Disaster Recovery Institute International. She's also a member of the Business Continuity Institute. So before I pass on to Cheryl, the usual housekeeping matters. Cheryl will prompt me when she's ready to take a question or two during her presentation. And at the end, we will allow most of you to, of course, ask your question. If you have a question, you could pose it in the question pane. And you could also raise your hand and I will allow you to speak at that point. Okay, so over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Natasha. Good morning and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Remember those cliches: plan for the worst and hope for the best, and expect the unexpected. Well, COVID-19 has brought us to the worst and the unexpected. For me, this has been even worse than what we as business continuity practitioners anticipated. As we look back on our pandemic testing and exercising, we mainly look at how to deal with the absence of the workforce and health and safety concerns and transportation, but not a lot of time was spent on borders being closed, country shutdown orders and curfews, and what those impacts would look like. So COVID-19 is definitely not a typical disruption. The coronavirus has impacted on individuals, organizations, and societies, and will reshape many of them. The speed and scale of the COVID-19 pandemic took many organizations by surprise. Even organizations that had pandemic plans in place found that they were closer to national or regional epidemic plans that did not readily adjust to the broad impact and global nature of the coronavirus disruption. So for today's agenda, first, I will present you with some of the challenges that you might already be aware of. or encountered, and then some strategies on how to deal with them during this pandemic. I will also present you with some of the core business continuity elements and which of these core elements can actually be used during this crisis. Then I will focus on key eight resources that you should consider during the pandemic. And finally, on lessons we can apply as next week starts, the beginning of the hurricane season. So what exactly is business continuity? I'm going to share a video that tells the tale. Just bear with me.
It looks like the internet is slow.
And it's a really nice video too.
Okay, maybe we'll just have to just speak to what business continuity is because it's taking a little while.
Okay, so business continuity is really about having a plan in place, identifying your critical functions and your applications and resources that you would need to help you to recover and to continue your business. Oh, so you see how you were able to see the video after all, right? And because of the turnout, it took longer to load to broadcast to everyone. So I apologize in advance. So before we go any further, um, I am going to ask, Natasha to help me with the poll on how you as participants prepared to handle the crisis so that we can have a conversation going forward on what you did and what you didn't do and what can help you prepare in the future. So I'm now launching the poll. So how many of you were well prepared? How many of you were somewhat prepared? And how many of you did not do such a great job? So I'm going to close the poll now because we saw 64% was somewhat prepared, 12% was prepared, and 20 was badly prepared. Wow. So we have some work to do. So here are some of the challenges arising from the pandemic. A huge challenge was communication. Many organizations were slow in getting their workforce up to have remote meetings to ensure staff could be kept informed with company news and strategy while working from home. Some organizations admitted that their response was slow for a number of reasons. For example, they were waiting for government guidelines before advising their customers or their clients. And organizations also felt least prepared for the supply and demand issues arising from the pandemic. And also social distancing was a challenge, which was a new concept for a lot of persons. The closing of borders and lockdown and curfews in some countries, leaving some organizations not being able to deliver goods and services, was also another challenge because they had not considered the business impact of a widespread global lockdown. The planning process also did not consider the financial hit that organizations are now facing. Departments also work in silos, so each department planned separately to one another, which meant the initial response was not very well coordinated. Many organizations also encountered delays in ensuring that their staff were set up with equipment to effectively work from home. Others reported encountering problems with networks, not being able to cope with so many staff working from home as well. Fake news was another challenge. That is why it is very important to get information from credible sources to alleviate the fear that was prevalent in the beginning and still continues today. So how did some companies react? Companies activated their work from home strategy for employees depending on the organization. As we know, some jobs just can't be done from home. We see some logistic solutions being offered as companies look to deliver services online or implement curbside pickups like some supermarkets. Companies also ensure the health and safety of employees and customers. And we saw this with some preventative measures being taken with the use of the face mask and hand sanitizer being used before entering businesses. I am not telling you anything new, as you have all seen this in action over the last few weeks. But we can recognize how businesses have changed over the last 2 months, and to make these changes comes with challenges. So part of my focus today is to address some of the challenges, example, working remotely, and how you can communicate with your employees and customers. So typically to deal with pandemic requires developing new businesses or new products or new markets. What does this look like? Creating new processes. Thanks to COVID-19, there's a new category in retail, the cloth face mask. For example, if you were a garment factory or fashion designer, you can now move to making face masks, which are needed and definitely in demand. This is considered a strategic change for the business. New product, new market. So how do you reconfigure your business operations? By using different processes. For example, if you are an auditor and you work with a client on site, Now you have to work remotely, and it is a different process that calls for different skills or different people to help you to achieve what you want to do. You will also need different types of skills to communicate with your clients remotely. For instance, if you are working in a retail store and now want to move your service online, how do you go about communicating that to your customers? This also requires a different use of technology. It is not that the technology is new, but it is shifting to using a different type of technology that best suits your needs during this time to deliver your products and services to your customers. Some of these products are like Skype and Zoom and other video conferencing tools that have now exploded because of this crisis. I have never used Zoom so much in my life prior to March this year. So in other words, you have to reconfigure your resources. So how do we go about configuring these resources to address these challenges? Let us explore this as we take a look at some core business continuity elements. Some of you are familiar with quality and standards that have to be met before you can export your goods and services. Business continuity also has an international standard, ISO 22301. This helps your organization to manage the risks that threaten the smooth running of your business and ensure that it's survivable in the event of a disruption. The first element is the business continuity policy. A business continuity policy is a set of standards and guidelines an organization enforces to ensure resilience and proper risk management. These include the objectives, what is the scope, roles, and responsibilities of getting commitment from senior management. All this is done in your business continuity policy. The second element is your analysis, which is reviewing and assessing an organization to identify its objectives, how it functions, the constraints of its operating environment. And it does this in two parts, the business impact analysis and the risk assessment. The third element is your business continuity strategy, identifying, selecting, and agreeing on solutions that enables an organization to mitigate risk and achieve its continuity in the event of a disruption. You can have the perfect disaster recovery or business continuity plan, but if you do not have the resources to be able to execute, then you won't be able to use those plans in a real situation. You will just have a plan in theory. For example, if you wanted to plan for a secondary location or backup site, and you did not rent the space prior or made arrangements, then you cannot execute. Or you had planned for a cloud service and did not actually sign up for it. Or if your staff is not trained on the cloud service, then your plan is not going to work as you expect it to. So this is what the business continuity strategy is all about. It is preparing the resources that you will need to deploy in a crisis situation. The fourth element is your business continuity plans. It is putting the practice and the solutions and mitigation measures agreed upon into place. It's a step-by-step of what you are going to do in the event there is a major disruption and how you are going to move forward from the point of disruption to starting your operations, which is the main purpose of the business continuity plan. The final element is about testing and exercising the plan. This is confirming that the business continuity program meets the objectives set out in the policy and that the plans and procedures in place are effective and continually improved upon. You can't plan for every event, but as events occur, you update as you go along to see what works and what doesn't. So which of these elements are useful in the current crisis? Certainly not the business continuity policy. The business impact and risk assessment is not useful as a recovery time objective is not known in a pandemic, as we're even talking about a second wave. But we can look at some of the risk scenarios, like working from home. Business continuity strategy, I believe, is the most useful as it looks at some resources and solutions that we can activate. Business continuity plans tell us how to recover, but some of the businesses are back in operation, so not so much unless you are looking at communication and decision making. Testing and exercising is limited during this time only if you did not have a work from home strategy and you see this as the way forward and want to perform some testing before implementation. So business continuity strategy is the most useful during this time. Before moving on, I can take one question, which Natasha is going to help me with.
We don't have any questions yet, Cheryl.
No? Okay.
No.
So moving on. So all of these resources requires consideration to implement your business solutions. And we will go into each one in detail. So human resources. To achieve flexibility and transparency, you have to train your people quickly for the new skills that are needed for the change in your business operations. Even if you are working remotely, you just don't know who is going to get sick. Everyone needs to have a backup person. So cross-training is also important. So if you have not done cross-training before, now would be a good time. You also need to build trust in these types of events. So make employees aware of the real situation and be completely honest with them. Provide regular updates. So communication must be open. Be flexible. Allow your employees to bring innovative solutions to the table. Oftentimes, they are the ones on the ground and know what is going on and might have suggestions and ideas that can be useful. Relaxing the organization hierarchy could also be useful to allow employees to be more engaged. Now is the time to relax some strict procedures, within reason, of course, and be more flexible. For example, you might have two persons as an approval process, but only one person is available during this time. You can appoint a temporary access to another person in the meantime to get the job done. Be ready to hire new people quickly if your existing employees become unavailable. If your workforce is not at the level you want it to be due to employees now having to homeschool their children or taking care of a sick relative, you might need to fill this gap and look outside for temporary workers. Another key resource is information and data. If you can move everything to the cloud. If your information is in the cloud, it is available and easier to access from anywhere. Use only authorized cloud services and control the access. Do your due diligence and use those online services that meets your standard and organization needs. Which ones you would allow and which ones you won't. Who will have access and communicate to the staff? Pay attention to security. Please, please, please do not share your passwords with your family members. Don't allow them to use your company laptop, as they may go on sites that your company do not allow and will set off all types of security alarms and can be harmful to the company and could have consequences for you as the employee. We also see a heavier use of collaborative tools. For example, Skype and Zoom. And then for messaging, there was Slack, Microsoft Teams. For file management, there's Dropbox, Google Drive. And for task management, there's SharePoint and Asana. There is no disruption of the internet during this time, except for being slow. However, hurricane season is around the corner, which could cause some disruption. So make sure you have redundancy measures in place. Physical infrastructure is another resource that is very important. If people can continue to work from home, they should do so, as that looks to be the solution for the foreseeable future as the new normal. Or you can have employees split, where some are working from home, but some still actually go into the office. For people that remain working at your facilities, introduce strict preventative measures. The goal is that these employees feel safe and that there is physical distancing, disinfecting, cleaning, awareness, training, and personal protective equipment is available to them. Employers have a duty of care to identify and manage risks to ensure that the workplace is sufficiently safe to return to. Employees should take their time with gradual returns to work to test health and safety measures in the practice and ensure that they can work with large numbers before encouraging more of their workforce back to work. Preparing your office. The exit path from a pandemic involves a strategic organizational changes to health and safety protocols and practices, facilities restructuring to accommodate low contact doors, etc., and enhance access control. You would also have a potential new supplier base and IT infrastructure to accommodate increased digitalization of the businesses. A marketing strategy to say you are open for business and what businesses you are now open for, to name but a few. Then there's also office equipment. You may have to use printers or laptops to take home with you. Make sure that you have a sign out and sign in process in place, and make sure that the employees are trained on how to use this equipment as well. Equipment and consumables require strict rules and proper planning. Introduce strict preventative measures, for example, wiping and cleaning of services and equipment frequently. If you need to borrow equipment from the office to work at home, make sure you have a process in place. Raw materials, purchase your consumables and raw materials upfront to avoid any shortages. Those items that must be replaced regularly because they wear out or are used up. For example, if you manage a coffee shop, then you want to ensure that you have supply of food and beverages. Those making face masks, that they have enough materials for their finished product. Pharmacies, make sure that they can supply medication and that supermarkets can supply with food. IT and communication systems. Your company information is confidential. Be aware of your surroundings, especially when you're at home and you might have some of his family visitors. Require security passwords for company computers, networks, and databases. Limiting access to confidential information on a need-to-know basis. Prohibit access to and storage of confidential information on personal electronic devices. Please password protect your files because it ensures the integrity of your data. Plan for alternative internet connection in the case of communications breakdown. So have additional computers, smartphones in case of a malfunction. Increase your information security screening. Cameras and hackers are rampant more than ever and can use the outbreak to violate your organization. Set up your tele-video conferencing services and increase capacity or remote access facilities, including the capacity of the internet connectivity. Review any agreements for your company mobile devices, accommodating high level of voice and data traffic. Review and allow maintenance services for all the devices, physically or remote. A word of caution here. As we strive for business continuity and relax some of our organizational compliance measures, we still need to maintain our standards and level of governance processes and oversight. When you take a look at your transportation and logistics, flexibility, caution, and patience is very important. So you have to keep up to date with changing pandemic rules and adapt accordingly. As my colleague Norma said on last week's webinar, this crisis requires us to be flexible and agile. So strict compliance with health and safety rules at all times must be adhered to. I was reading an article recently that indicated that airlines are still working on their travel guidelines where first-class passengers are now being seated last, and you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. So you can see that there are going to be interesting times ahead in relation to transportation and air travel. Allow innovation, completely different ways in how you deliver your goods and services going forward. We in the Caribbean import a lot of our goods, especially food. Now is the time that we should be looking across the region to see how best we can fill this need for each other. Look after your customers very carefully. There will be some unsatisfied ones, so be patient. As a business owner, your first inclination may be to just correct the problem as quickly as you can, but your customer probably also wants to vent and be heard. So taking the time to let them express their feelings can often be the difference between a customer who stays loyal to your business and one who decides to go elsewhere. Sure, it's an investment in time, but when you consider the consequences of having an angry customer who may very well tell 20 other people about his or her experience, it's time well spent. Build your local community. Offer shout outs to those that are supporting the local community and that support your business during this time. And give hope. People will always remember how you make them feel, and giving them hope in times of a crisis is a great way to create positive energy and to make sure that you can move forward. Finance. Cut all costs that do not show direct return on investment. You might have an office that you are no longer using due to employees now working from home. Cut down on the cost of your research and development and focus on projects that can show quick returns. See if there are any government support and go after it. Work on getting monies owed from clients quicker by offering them maybe a discount. Work with your bank and credit unions to extend payments of any debt and ask your shareholders for help. If you have any shareholders that are rich or very resourceful, I'm sure that they would come to your aid. And also see what arrangements you can make with your suppliers as well. Connect with your partners and suppliers. Seek out and work with those that are ready to operate in a new environment. You must be able to adapt your service and product to your fast changing operations. Be resilient. Look for ways you can overcome this crisis by being innovative. Suggest solutions on how you can improve your product or service. Be in daily contact with your partners and your suppliers. Make sure that you are on top of their list. So these 8 items can help you get started if you haven't done so already on what you can do. Communication is so very important during a crisis. Identify all interested parties, like your employers, your suppliers, your customers, your investors and shareholders, and your regulators. Who needs to communicate to whom and what? Make sure you have the right spokesperson for the media if required. If you don't have an in-house public relations person, you can outsource for the occasion. Human resources should be available to communicate to employees on issues impacting them and to answer any questions or queries you may have. Give people what they need when they need it. People's information needs to be involved in a crisis, to evolve in a crisis. So should a good communicator's messaging you should have at all times. Different forms of information can help listeners to stay safe, cope mentally, and connect to a deeper sense of purpose and stability. Communicate clearly, simply, and frequently. A crisis limits people's capacity to absorb information in the early days, so focus on keeping listeners safe and healthy. Then repeat, repeat, repeat. Trust is never more important than in a crisis. Be human, be honest about where things stand. Don't be afraid to show your vulnerability and maintain transparency to build loyalty and lead more effectively. Accentuate the positive and strengthen communal bonds to restore confidence with your employees and with your customers. This crisis will end. Help people make sense of all that has happened. Establish a clear vision or mantra for how the organization and its people will emerge. And be consistent in your communication and maintain the flow at all times. Before moving on, if there are any questions, I can take one now. Natasha?
Yes, thanks, Cheryl. We have a question. I think when you spoke about the ISO certification, so Chad Frazier is asking what's the pathway to getting ISO certified?
To become certified, you have to have a BCM program in place. So at the end of the session, I actually have resources that you can tap into to help you get on your way to being certified. And when you look at I have shared 5 elements of the business continuity management program. Those are the 5 key elements that make up part of your certification for the ISO standard. So you have to make sure that those are embedded into your program as well. So thank you for that question, Chad.
Do you want to take another comment?
Sure, I can before going forward.
Kathy, I will hand you the floor to ask your question, or put your comment rather. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Kathy Daniel.
Hi, good morning.
Hi,
I just wanted to make one comment about the cutting of costs. One of the things that businesses do, and I think it's a huge mistake, is to cut their marketing and advertising budgets. You mentioned cutting costs that don't have an immediate return on investment. I would suggest that instead of cutting, they take a long, hard look at where they're spending their money. Yes, you may have to reduce the amount of money you're spending, but look at the channels that you're using and the message that you're giving, because your customers, if they don't know that you exist, if they don't know you're still in business, that's a big problem. So a pivot is necessary, but not a cut. That's my only comment.
That's a good point, Kathy. Yes, you have to take in consideration the type of business that you're in and how you want to move forward. So if you require marketing and stuff like that, yes, you have to put that into your budget and not necessarily cut. When you talk about cutting, looking at your holistic organization and things that you are, and prioritize the things that you would need to help move your business forward. So if marketing is important for you, then no need to cut that. But you need to look at the organization holistically and see how to prioritize your finances going forward. So thank you for that question. So lessons learned we can apply as we head towards the hurricane season. So natural disasters do not care what is going on with human health issues. Likewise, a pandemic do not care about weather conditions. As much as we would like, hurricane season cannot be postponed or wished away. So as we prepare to get back to some kind of normalcy, preparations for the hurricane season that begins June 1st, which is next week, should still be a priority for all of us. COVID-19 should serve as a warning sign, highlighting the importance of disaster preparedness and the overwhelming need to impose crisis mitigation strategies. So we in the Caribbean have oftentimes been very complacent when it comes to hurricane preparedness. So this year, let us implement the 5 Ps: proper planning prevents poor performance. Typical hurricane preparedness measures include having an emergency plan. And this includes important contact information for your family members, your fire, your police, Department of Emergency, a go bag. This is a ready-to-go supply kit that can help your family leave home quickly without having to worry about packing up too many necessities. Your important documents, put your Documents in a waterproof, sealable container for easy grabbing, like your passport, your driver's license, medical records, your prescriptions, insurance, if you have a will or your mortgage documents. Know your evacuation route. Go through each room of your home and plan the quickest and safest escape route that you prepare for. Make sure each member of your family knows what that plan is and how to put that plan into action should you need to make a quick escape. How do you get to your shelter if you need to go, and where it is located? Build a disaster supply kit, and these usually include like your food. I know during hurricanes we wait until the hurricane is on our doorstep to run to the supermarket, but I'm sure with COVID, when everybody was concerned about food, so you should be well stocked up for your food in this instance now. But make sure you have your water, any blankets, a change of clothing, your flashlight, your radio, batteries, a fire extinguisher if needed, your cell phone and chargers, and your medications. Make sure you have medication for 3 to 4 weeks if possible. And in light of COVID-19 now, these kits should also include your sanitizer, your face mask, and gloves and hand soap. Also some cash, because the ATMs might not be accessible and you might need some cash for whatever reason. Do an insurance checkup. Make sure that your insurance coverage is paid up and that it has coverage for if there's a flood as well. And strengthen your home and your business. Make sure you have shutters, cover up your equipment in the office before you leave, move any equipment and raise it off the floor as necessary. If your organization is in a flood-prone area, make sure you get sandbags and put down, but really secure your premises before leaving. Help your neighbor. This is very important during these times, that we be your neighbors' keepers. So look out for, if there's a business next door to you, make sure and see how they're doing. Likewise, in your neighborhood, look out for your neighbors and share information with your community. In this pandemic, a lot of persons were unaware of some of the things that were going on and some of the measures that were being taken. So if you have information, credible information that is, make sure that you share it with the community that you're in. You should already have updated and reviewed your business continuity plans, because as you can see, before, during, and after a crisis takes preparation. While a hurricane does provide some advance warning, this warning does not provide enough time to adequately prepare for your business continuity. What is required is a serious and thoughtful and committed approach to the challenges of recovering your business, whether your company is in a hurricane risk area or not. So make hurricane preparedness your business before the wind blows. And don't be like Albert. When you don't know what to do, walk fast and look worried. That is not a strategy to use. So in conclusion, focus on reconfiguring the 8 crucial types of resources. Keep in mind that in order to succeed, communication and swift decision-making will help you to address most of your operational challenges as you prioritize your critical business activities. Stabilize your cash flow, extend financial resources, and keep operational and maintain your reputation at all times. Many organizations have explored new ways of working during the pandemic, and for some have discovered new business opportunities. They therefore feel that reverting to their old model is no longer viable. Others are concerned that their products and services will no longer have the demand required and are concerned about the financial impact if they fail to change their business models. Whatever the path your organization takes, business continuity professionals will have to write plans, assess the risks, and build a new set of documentation for the new organization type of business. So some tips I want to leave with you for the post-pandemic posture. People, pandemic planning extends beyond a reduced workforce. Your outlook, horizon scanning, or detecting early signs of potentially important developments and executive escalation is very important. Your strategy, inventing on the fly, is not as effective as fine-tuning predefined situational responses. Your technology is rapid enablement of remote workforce and distance collaboration. Urgency, making and implementing decisions swiftly. Communication and collaboration protocols and capabilities are very important. Resilience, we are living enterprise resilience, whether pre-planned for or not. A resilient culture has now become even more essential than before, and enable your workplace to be more flexible across a variety of options that we are now faced with. As I mentioned earlier, these are some resources. So if you're looking to implement your ISO 22301 implementation and certification, IRIS Consulting Group is one company that will be able to assist you in that regard. And then Business Continuity Institute and the Disaster Recovery Institute International are two organizations that have a series of webinars, blogs, a lot of information that can help you in understanding what business continuity is all about and how you can go forward in making sure that your business is safe and able to recover from any disruption. Thank you, and I will take some questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Colleagues, for those of you who are asking, the presentation, the recording will be shared with the feedback questionnaire when it is launched. So just look out for that. Ian Sanchez has a question. You could go ahead. Ian, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Sarah, good morning. Thank you very much for your presentation. In terms of the situation currently, most companies will be faced impending expenses, salary expense. How does company look at from a human resource point of view in order to lay off? How do we look at it in a very gentle and deal with it in a gentle as possible way?
Some companies can look at having like a week on, week off to avoid actually making persons redundant or making persons lose their job entirely. So you can look at different ways of how you as a company and your finances, how best you can go about reducing salary expenses. So that could be one way that you can look at it. Having persons, what they're calling furlough, so you can have persons work X amount of days in a month or something to help with reducing your expenses, or taking a 50% cut as well. Some managers are doing that as well, taking a 50% cut in order to reduce the payroll expense. But you can have more conversations with, I'm not an HR expert, but you can engage a HR counsel to help you with that area. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so colleagues, if you have any questions, you could raise your hand at this point. Just while you're thinking about it, just off of Ian's question, Cheryl. So earlier you mentioned there are 8 key resources. You mentioned IT, HR, communications, finance, your partners, your infrastructure, etc. Based on your experience, and given the fact that we're dealing with a number of small businesses, SMEs, you know, we have companies that have to make those decisions, you know, cost benefit analysis. Is there, if there were 3, you know, can you rank those 8 resources? In your experience, is there evidence to suggest one over the other, or is it really up to the firm to make a determination on what resources they might have to, you know, do away with for a temporary period? Given what the earlier participants spoke about marketing, of course, communication is important. And so sometimes we may think that the investment for marketing may not be immediate, but of course they are long term and you'd want to continue to communicate with your audience and your target market. So is there a ranking of sorts? Can you identify 3 top resources that one may consider as important and not within the realm of cutting it out?
I would say they're all important, but human personnel, they're your key, your greatest asset are your people. So you should try to do as much as you can to retain them. And in this period, technology is really important and is going to be driving a lot of the businesses going forward. So I would say technology is high up there on the radar. And so companies are going to be investing a little bit more in their technology going forward.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, I thought there was some feedback there. Denise Thomas, he's asking if you can, when you spoke about the IT infrastructure and data backup, if you can go over that, what are the tools to be considered for this resource?
What tools are required for your IT backup?
Yeah, you mentioned Google Drive, Dropbox, the cloud. What are the resources should one consider in this cloud?
There are several online services that you can use to do your backup. So you would have to do your own independent research in terms of what best suits your company needs and what you can afford at this time, because everybody's looking at the financial impact. So you have to look at your own organization and see what your needs are in order to determine what you can do during this time. If you need more information, my email is going to be at I'm going to put it up for you. My email, you can email me and I can share more information that you might think would be helpful for you. But what I want to ask participants as well is if they can share their experiences in terms of how in their organization, what worked for them and what didn't, and how they see the way forward.
Okay, Nicholas Ramsey, you have the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, good day. Can you hear me?
Yes, go
Yes,
ahead.
I can.
Hi, good day to Mrs. Cheryl Griffith and Mrs. Natasha Walcott and everyone. Just wanted to add something. It's more of a comment with regards to the options that Mrs. Griffith gave. If anybody wants to be certified in ISO 22301, you can reach out to me as well, just as an option. N. Ramsey Consultancy Ltd. That's my company, and we certify people in 22 based on the 22301 standard. We're out of Trinidad and Tobago. So again, N. Ramsey Consultancy Ltd. If you need assistance with the ISO 22301. So just giving another option as well. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas.
it's good that we have persons in the region that are actually doing this, because we tend to look outside to North America for these type of certifications. So it's good to know that we have these resources in Caribbean.
Is there anybody who has some experience they would like to share with regard to how they've dealt with the crisis and business continuity? Any words of advice? The challenges that were faced and how they will approach? Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi there. Well, I've been working from a home office for 10 years now, but over the years, we've had some interesting experiences. And one of the things that I would strongly recommend, I'm a graphic designer and marketer, so very, very heavily dependent on technology. And invest in a UPS, uninterruptible power supply. Invest in protection for your electronics, because you never know what's going to happen. The structure that we're in is relatively new, it's strong, minimal danger of flooding, that sort of thing, but you can't control when your electricity is going to go out. And I found that out the hard way, so I invested in a UPS. But you know, mine is a micro enterprise. I know there are bigger enterprises out there, but some form of generator. Going back to your go bags, I would say invest in those little power packs for your mobile devices. You can get these little, you know, it looks like a cell phone sort of thing. It's a portable battery basically, and that can keep you going. When my internet went out, I used my cell phone as a hotspot so I could still continue my business from my desktop computer. So you gotta think outside the box and try and be prepared. But every business is different, but certainly some sort of storage of energy, a battery pack, whatever, generator, if you can manage, something like that, so that you can at least shut down in a controlled manner, if nothing else.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kathy. Those are very, very good points. I would add that having a generator before the hurricane season, make sure that it's actually working and functioning, because we buy stuff and put down and say this is for the hurricane season and hope that when the hurricane is on the door, you're just going to plug it in and it's going to be working. So make sure that you test these things again before the hurricane starts. Yes, so those companies who do have generators on top of their buildings, just to make sure that they're maintained before the hurricane season and they're serviced properly.
Okay, thanks. We have a comment or question from Suzanne Thomas. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for your expertise, Cheryl. I'd just like to comment that Kathy is really on the ball for a micro person, not so micro after all. Very good points. And I'd like to say that for someone who worked in project management with the BPO sector, one of the things they do so very well is this very topic, business continuity. And I'd like to say that much of their documentation is available online as white papers. So if you would like to do further reading, and though we'd love to be able to afford you, Ms. Cheryl, we can't always get consultancy in the micro world. I think that a lot of the white papers written for the BPO sector, business process outsourcing sector, they look at everything from the technical perspective of backups. And such a good point, Kathy. I mean, sometimes I'm in Jamaica, we actually have to have two different service providers because the capabilities can be knocked out completely with this large demand that we now have thanks to COVID. So again, thank you so very much. And there's a lot of online learning and white papers that we can focus on and look at for planning for the future, because things like what you're speaking of in terms of UPS, those should have a maintenance plan and be ongoing with a backup for insurance and so on and so forth. There's lots of things that we didn't have to know before, but now I think it's a part of our new going forward. Thanks again.
Thank you for that. So I want to respond on two aspects. One on the like flow and Digicel. So if you want to have a redundancy, but make sure that you have these conversations with these providers prior to the event, because don't say that I have flow and when it goes down, I'm going to switch automatically to Digicel. It doesn't work like that. So you have to have conversations with your providers prior to the event to make sure that they understand your business and that they're able to provide the services that you're looking for. And yes, and secondly, in terms of you're saying that you can't afford me. You don't know that. I'm actually more interested in working with the small businesses for that same very reason, because they think that they can't afford a person. But in these times, we need to be able to be flexible and work with what you have. So don't think that you cannot afford an expert or a consultant. Just reach out and you'll be very surprised at what you can get.
Point taken, Ms. Cheryl. Thank you.
Okay,
Hi.
just have yes, who's this? Sorry.
It's Kathy again.
Oh, go ahead, Kathy. Sorry.
No problem, no problem. The big question for me, okay, I'm in a blessed situation. My husband is a financial consultant. He's also my business partner. He's more the silent partner, but he looks after the financial end of things. And early on, he asked me, can you afford not to have a plan? You know, we think, as you said, the micros, we say, oh, well, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. Do your research. Do your research. You'd be surprised. And I mean, to me, it's like automobile insurance. You hope you never need it, but you know, when something goes sideways in a big way, you need to have some kind of backup.
Yes, you do. So Kathy, tell Colin to give me a call, please.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy. Chad Fraser, you had a question? Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm not sure if I missed that part of the presentation, or if it happened. I went on a call somewhere in between and I had to mute. But how does insurance come into play as it relates to business continuity? Are they recommended policies, or for organizations that fits into part of the business continuity plan?
Yes, insurance is used as a transfer of risk to the business. So, like let's say your organization, there was a fire, you would have put mitigation measures in place, that you might have had fire extinguishers and stuff like that. But if your company was actually destroyed, then that is where your insurance would come in. So insurance is used as a mitigating measure, but it's a transfer of risk then not to you, but to the insurance company. So you're transferring your risk from the business to the insurance company.
But are there policies that would govern that would cover things like loss of business? I'm not an insurance expert, right? But are there policies that would cover things like loss of business because of things like COVID or other natural disasters? So you're not receiving income as you normally would, but you still have expenses to cover. Are there policies that are geared towards organizations that depends heavily on cash flow and so forth? I'm not too sure.
This has been a recurring question recently. I have reached out to a few insurance companies and they do not offer it. So I'm not sure if it's something that they will consider in the future, but you can insure your business, but I'm not sure if for loss of job. When I reached out to them, it was not something that they offer, because a lot of persons have been asking this question.
Okay, well, thank you.
The only insurance that I know of is, I think it's called personal protection insurance, and that's if you're a high-risk employee, then your company insures you, so that if, I'm going to use a very bad example, if you were in an accident or a plane crash or something, then the company gets that insurance on your life. But it's like a life insurance policy for a high-risk employee. That's the only insurance that I know is offered at some companies, but not all. But it's not the type of insurance I know that you're talking about.
Okay, thanks for that, Chad. Willana Odlam or Oldham, sorry. You can pose your question, please. Go ahead, Willana. Okay, she appears not to be. Willana is asking, she says, we are a manufacturing facility and have implemented HACCP certification. Why would we need to implement ISO 22301?
I am not. HACCP is the health and safety.
Yes.
Right.
So,
but they're two different disciplines. Health and safety talks about health and safety. The ISO 22301 talks about business continuity and the measures that you have to put in place. So they're two separate disciplines. I know that in some organizations they have taught business continuity to health and safety, but they're two separate disciplines and serve two different purposes.
yeah, that would have been is in relation to food and safety, and the 22301 is exclusive to business continuity, if I understand correctly. So Willana, there are two different objectives, two different certifications. Okay, just bear with me. I'm just going through the question pane to see. I believe Andrew Satney, you had a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Walcott and Miss Griffith. I think Miss Walcott, you're doing a fantastic job with respect to business continuity in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have, as the Chamber of Commerce, we have the good fortune of being a member of what you call the National COVID-19 Task Force. So business continuity has a lot to do with the operations of ports and the customs department. And very early o'clock, with the relationship we have and our input into the process, customs and port agreed they would never close. In fact, goods were cleared by using the technology by the customs department, and the port would operate as long as the ships come, using, of course, the necessary protocols presented by the government. So the functioning of your customs department and your port is very important for your business to continue to operate, especially in islands like St. Kitts and Nevis, where 80% or more of what we use is imported. So that is very essential for one, if you have to bring in food and food products into the country. And similarly, construction products as well, like, lumber, cement, and everything. These two areas are extremely important in any, and it goes the same as you go into the hurricane season as well. If your port is not functioning, you could be in a lot of trouble. I just wanted to say that I don't know what the relationship is of private sector organizations in the various countries, but it is very essential that the Chamber of Commerce is involved in the decision-making process when it comes to ensuring that businesses operate during any crisis and continues to operate, because these are the sectors that can say that we are open for business. Of course, the sector that's most hit in St. Kitts and Nevis is the tourism and hospitality sector, as you know. From the time the ships stopped coming and the flights have been cancelled for a while, that's the sector that has been affected most. But as we move forward into the process and we get to understand exactly what we need to do and so on, we found that some businesses have been able to continue, and that is very important. Thank you, and great job, Natasha. Thanks.
Thank you for that. There is the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce, and they will be able to. I know they're doing a lot of work. They also have a disaster risk reduction committee who is looking at disasters and how.
Sarah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I was going to talk about CARICHAM, but it's great that you've introduced it, because we are a member of CARICHAM. The membership is over 21, including all the countries in CARICOM and CARIFORUM, from the Bahamas, including Cuba, Dominican Republic, the Dutch Islands, the British Virgin Islands, all the way down to Suriname and the French Islands. So last week we had a very good presentation with the UNDRR, and
yes.
we had a representative. So we've been doing fantastic work, and soon in the next 2 days we have a presentation from the governor of the Central Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis as it relates to the actions that companies can take to ride in for the challenges. Thank you so much for bringing this in, Sharon.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. Suzette Merrill, you can go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, thank you for all the information. I had a general question, or more or less a general statement, and the second was a question. I did say my observation upon listening is that this is a very general and useful framework. But I wanted to get more of your experience as a practitioner in the field of business continuity. What has been your experience with dealing with businesses at this present time, if you have had, and if there were any best practices that would have been derived from your experiences with them. Secondly, I, among other things, I'm an owner of a car rental company with my husband. Although we had the opportunity to pivot into an alternate business service, such as delivery services, we opted not to, because we had to weigh the cost of continuing paying our insurance, which seemed to have come into effect, and that's car insurance on our company vehicles, during this pandemic. And if we weighed the cost of what delivery would cost us to do to our community, and maintaining our insurance on our vehicles, it would not have made much sense. So we decided to suspend insurance on a few of our vehicles. However, as of 4th of June, the government is reopening our borders to invite US citizens to, well, I guess it's a hotel, because I don't think all hotels are opening at the same time. By doing so, these hotels are offering car rental packages to those visitors. So taxi service and also car rental businesses will be adversely affected because of those new confinements and protocols. So I wanted to know, what would you suggest could be done, or how could this be dealt with? I hope it's not a mouthful, but that's the end.
Okay, so one, you want, in my experience, companies generally have a business continuity plan, and then they built out different plans based on that. So you can have a hurricane response plan, and we can have a pandemic plan. What we found was that when you look at the pandemic plan, it was very generic in that this COVID-19 was something that threw us a curveball, and there were things that we didn't take into consideration, the impact it would have on organizations globally in terms of the shutdowns and the curfews and things that were incurred by the government. So those going forward, those are things that we need to really take into consideration. However, those companies who did have pandemic plans, and which mostly looked at the workforce, was able to implement their work from home strategies earlier than other corporations. That has been my experience. And to your question, that's a really long-winded one, and I hope I remember, I can capture everything, but you have to, first thing, the health and safety is very important in how you move forward and working in the hotel sector, and how you deal with your transportation and stuff like that. So my question to you is, have you thought about, I know you want to get ready and start back working immediately, but have you already put those procedures in place on how you are going to implement your health and safety measures?
Okay, hope that answers the question for you, Suzette.
No, I had posed a question back to her. I had posed a question back to her if she has implemented any health and safety measures prior to getting to go back up and running.
Okay, apologies.
That is going to be key.
I was so distracted reading the questions that I had. Suzette, you want to rebut?
Yes. Oh, hi. Yes. Well, first of all, I have to say generally, I'm a freelancer, so I have always been working from home. And as a car rental company, your hygiene practices or policies are always in place, meaning, with the exception, of course, of mask and sanitizer, but you are supposed to thoroughly clean your vehicles both before and after they have been utilized. So of course we have in practice, as we have been practicing ourselves, the installation of sanitizer and even the offering of masks and the wiping down of our vehicles, even the inclusion of instructions to the users. So this is as far as we've done with hygiene. That's as much as you can do. The issue is the confinement and new protocols that are put in place are prohibiting visitors from mingling with locals, in other words, which means that to alleviate the possibility of any further COVID cases, we have been told, and I can stand corrected if there are any other solutions on listening in, that visitors will be confined to their hotels, and car rentals and taxi drivers will be selected or approved through the respective ministries to provide service. So it means it is not a pool available where the visitor has the choice to select. It's that the selection is being made for them. So in that way, our businesses are being adversely affected, that we may not have the opportunity to benefit from those visitors. So that's that's a concern. And as I said, yes, we can go into an alternative business service, such as delivering goods or packages as far as the citizenry may need. That's an alternative. But I think that is short-lived, because the more things go back to normal, then people will go in their vehicles and do as they were doing before. So yes, but we have the hygiene practices in place. That's not an issue.
Okay, so I was actually going to suggest, because I know one company here in Barbados did it, where there was a rental company, and they went into delivering goods to customers. They reconfigured their business to do that. So I was going to suggest that that is an option that you can probably pursue. But yes, it could be short term, but it has potential for long term as well too. So don't dismiss it.
Okay.
But that's another strategy that you can use.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes.
But I have a question for you in terms of so if a physical distancing in the car, so you have no limitations on how many persons you can actually put in your taxis then?
Well, we don't have a taxi, so it's car rental. So we allow only 2 persons. So we have instructions that there are 2 persons solely allowed. We have instructions as far as even when you use wipes, please dispose of it in the garbage or the bags provided. Don't leave them behind in the vehicle. We have sanitizing bottles in the vehicle. We've given masks as well. So we have taken the necessary precaution as far as it is possible. But the onus is still on us that when the car is returned, that we still thoroughly clean the vehicle so the next user would not be subject to anything left over in the vehicle.
Okay. Right. Well, good luck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll take a few more, I think 2 more questions or comments. Davis, Joseph, go ahead, please, sir.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted a comment. I think it's important to note that the tone, the intent, or the direction of the strategy actually matters, because it is possible to take a pessimistic view of the challenges that we have. So it means that every strategy, every tactic, every objective that you have will unintentionally be leading to a company that is shrunk, or one that you unintentionally trying to fold up. So I think it makes sense to have an optimistic perspective when it comes to planning a strategy, because all of the opportunities that COVID provides us, that is to be better when it comes to health and safety, technology, communication, our resilience. These are things that we actually need. And it provides us with an opportunity to really get better at it. When it comes to gymming, our muscles really grow during the rest period. So if I'm simply saying the more optimistic the perspective is when it comes to the strategies that we put in place, we would know for sure whether we are preparing to fold up or whether we are preparing to expand and innovate. That's my comment.
Well, thank you for that comment. Yes, this is a time where companies need to revisit their processes and their operations and see what they can fine tune, ways and means of making their business what we call build back better. So this is an opportunity for companies to do that and see what they can do differently going forward.
Chad, did you have another question?
No, I did not. I think somehow my hand probably bounced the mouse there.
All right, no problem. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that I have no question. I think I accidentally clicked on the hand probably.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Dexter Warren, you have a question, sir?
I have a question now. Sorry. Apart from the ISO standard, right, that you identified, is there any other standard that I know ISO from my reading, they can be pretty expensive. You know, the process involved in actually getting them. But is there like a regional or other standard that's accepted internationally or regionally that we can look at?
I'm not aware of a regional standard, just the ISO international standard that I am aware of.
Okay.
Nicholas Ramsey, did you have a comment? So if that's not the case, I think we will just round.
Hi, sorry, just one statement to make, if you don't mind. I was just speaking on the ISO adoption. I was thinking that, but I sit on the Bureau of Standards in my country. So I am wondering, as I'm not too sure the gentleman is from St. Kitts, but it might be good to find out what the stance is from his country standpoint, because most times the countries adopt standards, and they may not be mandatory, but may be guidelines where companies should make the necessary or take the necessary action to follow through. So maybe he can look into that with his Bureau Standard agency in his country.
Thanks for that, Suzette. So colleagues, just by way of wrapping up, thank you, Cheryl. We've gone to 90 minutes, so thank you for the extra 30 minutes that you've spent with us. Obviously, the attendees were engaged and had very useful and pertinent questions for their business strategy going forward. And as you pointed out, this quiet time presents everyone with the opportunity to review their practices. I mean, COVID presented a challenge, but it is one that we hope during this time, the businesses, the operations will be reviewed to ensure that there are strategies in place, that you have actionable items that you will, review and put in place to ensure that should another event like this occur, and of course, given that we're in the Caribbean region where every year we have to brace ourselves for the hurricane season, that we all put things in place. So on behalf of Caribbean Export, let me thank you, Cheryl, and all our participants for your engagement. We hope it's been useful. We will ask that you respond to the short survey that will be launched as soon as the platform is closed, as soon as the call is ended, just to signal that we have an e-commerce series that will be forthcoming. We recognize that a lot of you have asked about e-commerce, and especially with this current situation, e-commerce trade will take, if it hasn't already, it is certainly on the forefront of our minds. So we ask that you stay tuned to our communication channels where you will be updated on future topics. E-commerce is one, but we will also look at intellectual property, and we'll have some market intelligence workshops, and you can rest assured that during this time, Caribbean Export is trying to pivot in terms of how we deliver our services. Do you have any final thoughts, Cheryl?
Just that everyone stay safe and adhere to the protocols. And if you have any questions or you need any clarification, you can just reach out to me and I'll respond.
All right, so thank you again. And to everybody, thank you for joining us and see you at the next one. Until then, I wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.